Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's 1010 webinar. My name is Els, and I will be your moderator of the webinar today. Today is a bit special because we have six different speakers, so the webinar will last from 10 to 11, only for today, not the usual 10 to 10:30. The speakers of today will present you the joint initiative on standardization, and in particular they will give you an update on the different GIS actions under CEN and or CENELEC lead. Let me give the floor to Paco. He will introduce you the speakers today.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. The joint initiative on standardization is an initiative run by many actors. It says, of course, it's a joint initiative. We will see how many signatories we have currently, because it's since the signature on the 13th of June in Amsterdam. It was an official signature event where Commissioner Bienkowska, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and some other high-level representatives from many stakeholders of the standardization system, including the European standard organizations, the European federations, the national standard bodies, national member states. They were there, Commission and EFTA. And this is an initiative that is framed in the context of the standardization package, which was published on the 1st of June. This standardization package covered different aspects, including the annual Union Work Programme for 2017, but especially the creation of a joint initiative on standardization, which was referred to also in the single market strategy published in October 2015. So the joint initiative on standardization contains a common vision, which was agreed by different stakeholders at European level, on what European standardization is and what European standardization should be. In an annex of this joint initiative contains 15 actions that have to be implemented, defined and implemented from 2016 until the end of 2019. So during the what we call the Juncker's Commission mandate. It should be noted that the joint initiative on standardization is not legally binding. It does not substitute any legal framework, any regulation, any policy, but it's a joint common agreement and joint common efforts among stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Currently, more than 101 signatories, plus 20 endorsements. So some organizations that could not join, cannot join the joint initiative because they are part of the standardization system, the European standardization system, but they endorse also the principles, the joint vision, and also they wish to contribute as far as possible to the actions. Mainly, the actors are the ones that you have in front of you: European Commission, EFTA, EU and EFTA member states, European and national standard organizations, European trade federation associations, and European societal stakeholder organizations, which are mainly the 4 Annex 3 organizations. Which are the expectations of CEN and CENELEC? Why CEN and CENELEC and national members joined the joint initiative on standardization? Well, we cannot talk about the others, the other parts which are part of this 101. We don't know exactly. We understand that our stakeholders in many cases are similar to those that are signing, but in our case, it's an opportunity to have an open discussion for a much better functioning European standardization system, to have a better interaction with the European Commission, EFTA, and the national member states on items related to standards supporting regulations and policies. To have more engagement of relevant European federations, to solve some of the issues that today we are facing in our daily life in the interaction between standards and regulations. For example, the timely citation of standards in the official journal, and also to have a better use of standards in the context of several EU policies and regulations. And for instance, I will give the floor in a few seconds to Gonzalo Asensao. He can talk about Action 5, which is one of the actions that we have, for example, on construction product regulations, but in many others, because in fact this joint initiative on standardization is aimed to improve the interaction between standards and regulations. These are the 5 actions that CEN and CENELEC, or CEN or CENELEC, are taking the lead. We have Action 5 on CPR. Gonzalo will speak in a few minutes. The Action 8, provide high-quality standards delivered and referenced in a timely manner. Action 12, European service standardization. Action 13, promote the European regulatory model supported by voluntary standards in third countries and regions. And Action 14, standardization in support of digitization. So these are the actions where CEN and or CENELEC, but in the case are taking the lead. But in the case of Action 14, is together with ETSI, because it's a joint leadership of the 3 European standard organizations. So now my pleasure to give the floor to Gonzalo Asensao, which will introduce the Action 5.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Gonzalo Asensao. I'm one of the program managers in the standards department in CCMC that is following the construction sector. And I've been active for a few years in the implementation of the construction product regulation and the implications on the development of European harmonized standards. So basically, Action 5, the Action 5 objective is to develop a collaborative common understanding of the role of harmonized standards under the CPR. As you may be aware, a few years ago there have been a series of harmonized standards that have been non-cited, and since then there are a series of challenges that we have been confronted with, and therefore there was an agreement to introduce this action specific on CPR to improve and clarify the role of harmonized standards under the CPR. One of the items that has been identified as important to define during this Action 5 was a series of procedural matters, like the amendment of existing mandates and the process of adding classes and thresholds into harmonized standards. So those are the main objectives of this Action 5, to provide a series of drafting documents and the guidance documents on the role of harmonized standards, and to clarify some of the procedural matters. As an expected outcome for this Action 5, so we have a common understanding of the role of harmonized standards. So at the moment there are different views, whether you are a member state, whether you are part of the Commission, whether you are an industry stakeholder. So this is the intention, to have a common understanding. We also have as an objective to optimize the processes. So for instance, for the development of standardization requests, for amendment of mandates, introducing classes and thresholds into harmonized standards, and also to provide clear guidance for the development of harmonized standards in the future. And as a generic objective, we have the intention to improve the understanding, streamline processes, and to increase the awareness of the development of harmonized standards in the framework of the CPR. So this action has the CEN lead, and you will be able to see in a second which are the other sponsors of this activity. As you can see, it's a very much varied representation. So we have national standardization bodies, several member states are actively involved, the Commission, industry organizations, and up to now this initiative has been very effective, and it has progressed quite fast in the beginning, and people are committed to improve the situation. We have 5 main actions in this Action 5, and I will go into a little bit more details in the next slide. So Action 5.1 is to provide this promotion of common understanding of the role of standards. We have 5.2 that is to clarify the simplified procedures for amending existing mandates. 5.3 is to streamline the process of introducing classes and thresholds. 5.4 is to streamline the process for the timely revision and citation of harmonized standards, which is also in a way closely linked with joint initiative action 8. However, in action 5, the main objective is really to deal with the technical issues and with the block standards we have at the moment. And there was a final action as well to ensure the continuity of the new approach consultants in the framework of the CPR. So, coming back to action 5.1, as I informed before, the main objective is to clarify the whole process in the framework of the CPR and the development of harmonized standards. So we wanted to do in the beginning to develop the existing guidance material. So we have highlighted which guidance material was available, and we have also listed the series of documents to be developed in the framework of the CPR. As a next step, we also aim at train the trainers. So as soon as we have documents available,
train the trainers.
We also have the objective to train the trainers, and as a next step also to further disseminate this information through the stakeholders. Action 5.2 is the one that I referred previously as to basically clarify the process of amending existing mandates. As you may be aware, 1025 introduced the concept of standardization requests. However, in the framework of the CPR, the Commission has continued amending existing mandates, and therefore there was the need to highlight as much as possible the process for this amendment of existing mandates. In order to clarify this process, what we have been doing was to develop a series of flowcharts with the existing process and with this amended process of mandates, which doesn't follow completely the rules identified in 1025, in the regulation 1025. At the moment, we have developed these two flowcharts. One of them is very closely linked with activities in Joint Initiative Action 8. And we are obviously keeping in contact to be sure that the flowcharts are similar. Now, Action 5.3, this action is basically to streamline the process of introducing classes and thresholds into harmonized standards. You may not be aware, but this is a very single process within the CPR, where the regulation identifies that if we wish to introduce classes and thresholds into harmonized standards, we may need to have a delegated act or an amendment mandate. So the whole objective of this action basically is to provide a framework, so a template for the introduction of classes and threshold, as well as to clarify this link with the amendment of mandates or possibly standardization requests in the future, or the need for a delegated act. We have then action 5.4, that is to basically to highlight which are the main standards that have none been cited, and also to highlight which are the matters that are blocking the citation of standards. So in this section, the main objective is also to develop a do's and don't-do's list so that we can afterwards transfer into the existing guidance material to be spread to the technical committees and all the stakeholders to avoid that these same cases will happen in the future. There is also a bilateral action, and this is actually more an action commission CCMC, which is to track all the non-cited standards and to take specific actions towards the resolution of the non-cited standards. So finally, action 5.5, we have identified as an action the need to ensure the continuation of the new approach consultants in the framework of the CPR. And as the main objective of this sub-action was to develop a rationale of the need, which has been done, and the European Commission has been informed about this. And the necessary steps will be taken in the future to ensure that the new approach consultants will continue in the framework of the CPR and not only in the framework of the CPR.
Some key learning points.
Yeah.
I think.
I will just highlight finally the main achievements of this Action 5 at the moment. So the guidance material has been identified, so we are currently in the drafting phase. We have agreement on a simplified procedure for the amendment of mandates and also on the template for the request of classes and thresholds. We have two flowcharts of the normal process under a standardization request and the process under the amendment of mandates, which will closely link with Joint Initiative Action 8. And at CENELEC level, we also have CENELEC BT Working Group 9, which is mirroring these activities in the Action 5. Finally, the 5 key learning points of this Action 5 are the following. As I referred a few times, develop a common understanding of the role of the harmonized standard, which is very specific in the framework of the CPR and pretty much different from the other areas under the new approach. Clarify the process and the guidance material necessary for the development of harmonized standards. And we also have as a main objective to optimize all processes that affect the development of harmonized standards. There is the intention to have a very collaborative work to increase the understanding the role of the harmonized standards in the framework of the CPR. So all the signatories are invited to join still Action 5. And finally, as soon as all the guidance is available, we have an overall objective to provide some training to all the stakeholders, and this is mostly for the year 2019, but obviously if some guidance is available this year, we will start providing training on the existing guidance.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo, for this overview of Action 5, which is the pilot project on CPR. A very related action is Action 8, which is a generic action covering all sectors to provide high-quality standards delivered and referenced in a timely manner. And for this, we have Gerd Maes, which is Senior Manager of Industrial Infrastructure in Standardization, Standards Department. The floor is yours, Gerd.
Thank you, Paco. Good morning, everyone. This is Gerd Maes. I will try to give you a brief overview of what is happening under Action 8 and the latest developments. First of all, the scope and objectives. It is in the title, Improve Timeliness and Quality of Standards based on market and public needs, from the preparation of standardization requests to the citation of standards in the official journal. So this means the entire development cycle should be covered from the development of a standardization request until over the development of the standard until its referencing in the official journal. There are 3 expected outcomes which are reflected in the work items in which we split the work to be done. This task is led by CEN with strong support from DIN. So you can see here the different sponsors. I will not read them out loud. And as I said, we have split the action in 3 work items, which is work item 1, dealing with the standardization requests and development process, then work item 2 with the standards development process, and work item 3 with the assessment of candidate harmonized standards and the publication of the references in the official journal. Now, work item 1, which is being developed by BSI Richard Collin, is addressing the 3 stages in the development of standardization requests: the citation and the use of the annual union work program, the informal consultations that lead to improvements of the standardization requests, and the formal consultation of the ESOs and their reply on the standardization request. A first series of recommendations have been put forward. There has been a commenting period, and we have a web meeting Wednesday this week to discuss the details of these comments. Work item 2 is a little bit more complicated. It is the standards development process. We started out with mapping the standard development track. This was done by Dean. And there are some proposals for improvement, which mainly focus on the time for the experts to work. So there is some reduction there proposed. But we also need to look at what is here between emphasis, the procedures such as translating, editing, etc., etc. So we came to the constatation there is a need for a dual approach. On the short term, an optimization of today's processes that we will deal with directly under this work item. And in the middle and long term is that we need a deeper reform that is maybe a little bit more, let's say, revolutionary, but that will be a new work item and that needs to be started up. Also for this work item, the current developments and documents will be discussed in the web meeting this Wednesday. Then the third work item, the assessment of the draft harmonized standards and publication in the official journal. So the Commission and CENELEC developed a document that is rather comprehensive, but now we, and I don't know how far you are aware, we have been confronted with a very moving target. The Commission has during June issued a one-pager on the citation in the official journal, which is a process to assess standards and accept them. There is the CENELEC reply in the frame of the action plan. And there is a changing situation surrounding the new approach consultants. Because the Commission intends to take them on board under their direct management, and we need to extensively discuss with the Commission how this now will affect all the work that already has been done in work item 3, if there will be other methods of working and what the impact will be. There is a web meeting this afternoon to discuss this. Then we had a meeting in Action 8 on 22nd of May, where we had exceptionally someone from the Commission's legal services to discuss a number of questions that we see almost every day. Amongst others, for the citation, are there really formal decisions needed? What is the implication on standardization request? How do we now have to interpret 10.5 and 10.6 of Regulation 1025 to 2012? And what is the impact on copyright? Very briefly, because there is a report on that meeting, but very briefly, the main points were that referencing in the official journal is a decision by the Commission. And this decision can be subject to annulment, just like standardization requests and formal objections. So this was a statement from the legal service, and to be able to have an annulment, so remove a standard from the Commission, you need first a decision from the official journal, you need first a decision to put it in. Also, it was confirmed that if the Commission decides not to reference a standard, they need to provide an in-depth explanation of the reasons why. And currently the Commission is looking into the aspects of Articles 10.5 and 10.6 of the regulation to ensure due process is followed that can be referred to if challenged. And this is the famous letter with the I'm sorry, with the one EC one-pager that the Commission has put forward. So there is a lot happening there. Any case, what was also mentioned is that the new approach is supported. We have to see all this as a support to the new approach if well managed. That is a Commission statement. But the European Court of Justice judgment are an assets test to move forward the standardization issues, and we all need to demonstrate that we are able to advance within the current architecture of the new approach, but on a quick and efficient pace. So, what did we learn from this? So, the recommendation to improve the process for standardization requests are in the making. For the standards development, we need to work on a short and a long term. Short term is optimization of current processes. Long term, we have to think a bit deeper. There is an expressed support to the new approach, but within a strict frame of Regulation 1025/2012. The Commission needs to and will be deeper involved during the development, allowing the EC to take this formal decision to cite the standard. That is what will happen with the new approach consultants. And all this has now a heavy impact on work item 3, because we need to start reflecting the latest changes to stay in tune with reality.
Thank you very much, Gert. And now I'm going to give the floor for Action 12, which is encouraging the greater development and use of European service standards to help integrate Europe's service market. I'm going to introduce Cinzia Misiroli. She's the acting director of the Standardization Department after the retirement of Jan-Paul Wetsuipens very recently. And it's my pleasure to give her the floor to introduce this very interesting action. Thank you, Cinzia.
Thank you very much, Paco, and good morning, everyone. I will briefly introduce you the joint initiative Action 12 on services standardization. And the objective of this action is really to promote, where appropriate, the increased development and use of market-driven European standards, this for the benefit of European businesses and consumers. This will be done through, first of all, a better identification and prioritization of areas where services standardization can be developed, an increased awareness and understanding of the benefit that service standardization can bring to those areas, as well as through a greater involvement of services providers and users. The expected outcome is the implementation of an action plan and the involvement of all relevant stakeholders in services standardization. We have, to this purpose, we have developed a strategy, SEN strategies, that is called the Strategic Plan on Services Standardization in Response to the Ambition 2020. The lead of this action is SEN, and we have quite a number of sponsors among the EU member states representatives, business organization, consumer organization, the European Commission, and of course representative of our members. The timeline is foreseen by the execution of this action by 2018, but of course beyond that, because the main purpose is really to engage with new stakeholders and new sectors within this area. The current state of play, well, the strategy on services was approved in March 2017 and is currently available for consultation on the SEN website. The joint action 12 has been in a way merged with the SAGS. SAGS is the Strategic Advisory Group on Services, and as of April this year, all members of the joint action 12 are inviting to contribute and participate in SAGS, which is the main body within CEN responsible for services standardization. And as a matter of fact, now all members of Action 12 receive the documents and participate in the meeting of this group. As of June this year, we have established two ad hoc groups that will execute the actions within the joint action 12 that are foreseen for this year. And in particular, we have ad hoc group 1 that is about awareness raising on services standardization that has been assigned as lead of this group, and ad hoc group 2, the identification of priority sector, that is led by INO. Here you have an overview of the actions that are foreseen in the action plan for the implementation of GIS-12, and highlighted in red are those that are foreseen for this year, meaning the development of the awareness raising package, the pre-selection of the services sector, and the application of the criteria to the pre-selected sectors in order to identify the 5-6 sectors that we should focus our activity. And of course, we will also make sure that the services is considered in all other relevant joint initiative actions. But let's go more into detail on the activities that are foreseen for this year. First of all, we have the development of the awareness raising package that is done by the ad hoc group 1, which has its kickoff meeting this week on Thursday. And the objective is really to develop a package containing targeted information material that will be based on the existing materials that we have at national level, that might include videos, leaflets, and brochures. It will also include the information on existing standards for services, and also on possible standards or type of standards that can be developed. And we will also collect case studies and success stories. The most important is that we speak the language of the sectors we want to involve. And this is indeed the deliverable is to have defined a communication package using language tailored to the different type of stakeholders. The deadline is rather ambitious because we have a deadline for October 2017, so only a few months for these activities. Then we have the identification of the priority sectors that is carried out by the ad hoc group 2. In order to support the activities of the ad hoc group, a consultant has been selected and will support us for the action 4 and 5. The kickoff meeting of this activity took place on the 14th of June, and the objective is to identify a first list of services sector that could be approached, and this will be done based on a mapping of existing national standards. We will also take into consideration the work that is carried out by our national standardization bodies and national committees. New trends, we also identified the new trends affecting the services sector, And also through an analysis of the activities that are ongoing in our technical committees for product standards, because some of them might also already be in developed some services related standards. We will also carry out an analysis of the evolution of the supply and demand of services based on existing studies and report on, for example, international trade. We will consider the EC database on consumer market scoreboards, as well as the forecast on services market for 2030. This is just to give you an analysis of the elements that we will consider in this action. And the deliverable is really to have a list of sectors that will with potential that will benefit from European standardization. The deadline for this identification is end of 2017, beginning of 2018. Then the last action foreseen for this year is to go more into details. So once we have these priority sectors, we will have a further analysis of those sectors in order to identify the key 5 or 6 that we should be our main targets for the future year and for the future year. And this will be done through an in-depth analysis of the service market and through the development of a methodology that will apply criteria that are included in the services strategy. And indeed, the deliverable is the identification of the 5 highest priority sectors. Our aim is to have this by February 2018. To conclude, really, the GIS Action 12 is really to promote the use and development of market-driven European standards in this area. This is done through the implementation of an action plan that is included in our services strategy. And to this purpose, 2 ad hoc groups have been identified, one on awareness raising and another one on prioritization, that all these signatories are invited to join if interested, and of course our members are also always welcome to join this activity, and to have by beginning of next year the 5 highest priority sectors that should be approached and hopefully will engage in standardization with us. The deadline for this is 2018, but of course the engagement will continue after that time.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. That is great. I would like to take this time now to remind you that all of you can post questions on any of the items that are being discussed. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Penny, our Director of External Relations, to present also a very important topic as the Action 13 on the promotion of the European model based on the use of voluntary standards. So, Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paco. Good morning, everyone. So Joint Initiative Action 13 is indeed the main objective is really to foster the competitiveness of our European industries and SMEs in global markets. And that is by actually promoting our European standardization model. So really pushing for common regulatory goals between the EU and those major trading partners, and of course by ensuring that through standards alignment we have the best implementation of those common regulatory goals. This implies that we put a focus on building common understanding with relevant trade partners, of which are the relevant international standards in the various sectors that will be targeted by geographical markets, and improving the coordination of efforts between European regulators and other members of the European standardization community when it comes to trade and regulatory dialogues. and that is of course to ensure the market relevance of or promotion of the model to those specific countries and regions, and make sure that we have coordinated and market relevant inputs for each key focus areas under those dialogues. This Action 13 is under the leadership of CENELEC actually. Now if we have a look at the action plan to support this activity, it is broken down into 5 main focus areas. The first activity is really to identify 3 priority areas, so regions or countries, and the related activities to support that. And that will be obviously based on stakeholder priorities, so depending on their needs and concerns for each of the 3 geographical priority areas. The next one focuses on developing a promotion strategy, and that will imply defining the core message, the channels for the promotion, who are the relevant targets, what is the timeline, and of course to look into the material that needs to be developed, as it needs to be really targeted to the specific audience. The third action is to raise the awareness amongst the relevant European Commission services, and that will imply identifying key units to raise awareness on the European standardization model and how to rely on standardization to support the regulatory and trade objectives of the EU. Of course, some DGs have been identified, but this needs to be confirmed by all the sponsors. We have obviously in mind DG Grow, DG Trade, the external services of the Commission and DEFCO. And then the fourth action is related to ensuring the appropriate involvement of European standardization and industry stakeholders in the various regulatory dialogues of the EU and trade negotiations. For that, we will have, as mentioned earlier, to identify the topics of interest for each regulatory dialogue, and that will be done through coordination with the sponsors and the various stakeholders to get the inputs before each negotiation round for the 3 priority areas, and of course to identify areas where technical cooperation on standardization may be needed to complete the trade discussions. And finally, Action 5 is a bit more specific, but very complementary. It's a proposal to launch a pilot initiative to support the development of an African continental free trade area that is based on the European quality infrastructure model and of course on the new approach and NLF principles. That is really to support the African Union's initiative to go for regional economic integration in Africa, and to use our various partnerships to foster and to support them in achieving this objective by, of course, promoting the European model. Now, having a look at a bit more in depth at who is involved in Action 13, you can see the sponsors on the screen. So CENELEC, ETSI, AFNOR, BSI, DIN, SIS, UNE are the NSBs which are very involved in this action. We also get trade federations involved in Action 13, like COSIR, Orgalim, we have UNIFE, and ECOS is also present, as well as SBS and DG Grow. The timeline, the end results are expected to be delivered by 2019, but of course the focus for 2017 will be on the first 2 actions. So as mentioned, it is the identification of the 3 priority areas,
the identification of the specific priorities related to those areas, so the specific needs and concerns, and the development of the promotion strategy, that is for 2017. The current state of play is that the sponsors have agreed on all the headlines of the action plan with a detailed implementation milestones. We have a meeting next week, a web meeting which will really confirm the respective roles and responsibilities of each sponsor for all those actions. We will also confirm how and if we integrate Action 5, which is on Africa, under this initiative. There was already some discussions before amongst the sponsors to confirm the relevance of such a specific action here. And next week we'll also validate the 3 priority areas and the related activities. So to conclude, just key learning points. I must say that for Action 13 we have experienced quite a bit of delay in Q1 and Q2 this year, but next week we'll redynamize the activities under this action, and we see an opportunity for Action 5 here, which is the EU-Africa Summit, which is due to take place in November this year. CEN and CENELEC have already had exchange with the European Commission and EFTA on this, and there may be an opportunity to integrate our proposals in the action plan of the summit. So that is something to bear in mind, because something very concrete could come out of this. So that is to conclude Action 13. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Another important element is, I would say, a strategic element is standardization supporting digitization. Digitization is one of the hot, I would say, topics today. And for this Action 14, standardization to support digitization, we count with the participation of the coordinator from CEN and CENELEC, which is Ashok Ganesh, Director of Innovation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Paco. As you say, digital transformation is a hot topic, and for this particular action, you said it earlier on, and I'll just say it again, the leadership is with the 3 European standards organisations, CEN, CENELEC and ETSI. And I think it's fair to recall that a year ago, after the initial signature of the joint initiative, the ESOs were very insistent that digital transformation of industry be included as a focus and an action under the joint initiative. And that reflects the expertise and the growing work programs of the 3 organisations in relation to digital technologies, ICT, and in fact for CEN and CENELEC we should note that CEN and CENELEC's strategic plan for digital transformation was adopted by the General Assemblies only last week, or the week before last. So the building blocks are being put in place, and the recognition also that standardization as a tool to support European industry to undergo digital transformation is an important asset. And how can the stakeholders through this Action 14 promote standardization, the knowledge of what is already in place, to make the link with the stakeholders to establish any standardization needs, whether that's writing new standards or providing information about the standardization work and the standardization support available. And it's also to respond to the growing policy initiatives which are there to support the creation of a healthy and successful European digital economy. So that's the background to this initiative. As you see on the screen, so supporting industry, looking to I mentioned the 2 key focuses regarding policy and also to the industry and industrial supply chains. The focus on the main stakeholders or traditional stakeholders of CEN and CENELEC, certainly the manufacturers in Europe, and making sure that they are equipped with the right standards to make their digital change. So we've mentioned the action leaders. The sponsors have included a number of CEN and CENELEC members, noted on the screen. We have had in the discussions representatives from 2 member states, France and Germany. We, along with industry representation and some input from the European Commission, DG Connect and DG Grow. At this point, I would say that the work under the activities under Action 14 have been modest, and that represents, I think, the level of input we've had. And I note some members of CEN and CENELEC, DIN, NEN, AFNOR in particular, have given very good and consistent resources and support for this action, alongside 2 industry representatives from Germany, Bitkom and SPI. But we really need more to make a significant impact. We really need more. We need a critical mass of participants, as I will try to outline as we go through. So the key thing we've sort of under in Action 14 we've sort of learnt and started to focus on is that we must build on what we've achieved in standardization. So you'll recognise some key sectors or activities: additive manufacturing, things like BIM, building information management, smart cities, smart energy, connected vehicles. That list on the screen is non-exhaustive. And looking at areas where especially industries are becoming connected, products and systems and networks. They're using technologies for connection. They're generating data and sharing it, storing it in for example, the cloud. They're exploiting the data. They're safeguarding the data. They're making sure of data integrity. And that brings issues of control, privacy, cybersecurity. And standardization has a role to play in all of those, making sure all of those systems, products, services function correctly and safely and in the way that industry needs. The main focus under Action 14, therefore, is to be able to promote what's going on, what's been achieved, what standards exist, excuse me, but also to exploit the strong network, the strong and extensive network of standardization bodies, standards partners, industry partners, societal partners, SME representative organizations, and the links with the European institutions. And that would be therefore to extend this standardization network to include a very key and important growing potential partner, the national industry platforms. I think it's one particularly well known is obviously Industry 4.0 in Germany, but there are a number of others I'll show on the slide in a minute. We have also some European level, growing number of European platforms and partnerships, such as the Alliance of Internet of Things Innovation, the European Cybersecurity Organization, the Big Data Value Association, public-private partnerships, alongside things like Factories of the Future, and of course the very key players like the One M2M partnership, which ETSI is very strongly engaged in, and CEN and CENELEC joined last year. So if we take as the first focus of extending our standardization network towards the national industry platforms for digital transformation, and on the screen I think are 12 or 13 of the key ones. There may be others who we don't know and therefore haven't included, and we would be interested to know more. And the next slides represent our the focus of our very current activity with our national CENELEC members, which is actually to try to understand what links exist between our national standards members and the national initiatives that we know of. So very shortly we will be asking our members through a very short consultation to indicate where they are linked already, if they have any plans to be linked or plans to carry out any joint activities, and understand what would be the potential for extending and deepening the links on with these national industry platforms for digitization. So the second slide is the completion of the list as far as we know it, and I'd be happy to know if we've missed any platforms that should be included in this list. So that's where we are at the moment in this action. Hopefully it's very boiled down finally to a practical focus, and if we're to call them learning points, what we've learned so far is we need to be relevant. We need to focus on what standardization can do to support industry in the context of digital transformation. We must build step by step on our existing achievements, including the sectors and our network. We must extend the network. And for this Action 14, if we are to be successful in any way at all, we need to have a critical mass. We won't achieve very much with the very nice and very supportive input of the participants who are involved. We need to broaden that and be carry more weight. But anyway, the next step is this number 5 on the list, which is to try to establish what links there are and what potential there is to link our standards members with at national level with the national industry platforms. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Ashok. I think we have achieved the program in taking into account the big amount of actions that we had in front of us.